I've always been incredibly fascinated by the mind-body connection and how to develop the relationship with self in a healthy way.
You know, some people are actually quite bad for you.
There's too much conversation about the trauma, and always talking about the trauma keeps the person traumatized.
How do people wake up? Welcome back to the I Wish You Knew podcast. My name is Sarah Dawn Moore, and I'm joined by my friend, Adam Lane Smith. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's hot here in Arizona, but it's always good to see you.
You too, Adam. Well, today we have a very, very special guest, and her name is Jillian Turecki. In a sea of bad dating advice, Jillian is a breath of fresh air. We are so happy to have you on, Jillian. Now, please tell the audience, what is one thing you wish they knew about you?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. Wow. Like I said, ambush. I wasn't expecting that question. What do I wish people knew about me? I think, everyone, when you're presenting yourself on social media as, a quote unquote expert, I'm not really revealing sort of my private life on social media, but I'm actually a very goofy person. So I maybe come across as very like serious and strong in my work life, but I'm actually like a very sensitive, goofy person in my personal life. That's what I'll share.
I have to say, I've been following your work, and it's always very soothing when I see one of your reels come across my Instagram feed. I get to learn quite a bit, and just your voice. You have a lot of authority because I can tell that you speak from a place that you know what you're talking about. Sarah, have you had the same circumstances following her for years now?
Yes, and I've watched your content evolve almost and become more intuitive, almost better. Like, I don't know if you've gone through something or have understood like what your audience needs to hear more of, but every time I open up a post or a reel, it speaks to me. So I guess I'm interested, kind of selfishly, to understand how you got to this place. You know, a lot of us start posting on social media because we have personal experiences with our own relationships or with our own struggles, or you notice a trend or something kind of happens to inspire you to get on social media and start doing what you do. So can you tell us kind of your origin story? And
I have to admit, I'm curious about this as well, because I was a licensed psychotherapist for many years. So I have two criteria when I come across a relationship, mental health kind of situation. I have two criteria that I apply to every creator. Number one, does their work line up with the psychology as I've understood it and through my training? And number two, does it resonate? Like, does this make sense at the core of a human experience? And your work does both. So please, I'd love to hear more about you and how you came into this.
Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. I'm very, very flattered and honored, truly. I have a long history. I'm a teacher, that first and foremost. That's how I would identify myself. I've been teaching people about their bodies and their psychology for over 20 years. I taught yoga for almost 20 years. And I taught classes, but I also worked with a lot of individuals. I worked with a lot of families. I worked with a lot of people somatically going through all sorts of traumatic experiences that was showing up in their bodies. And so I've always been incredibly fascinated by the mind-body connection. And I've always been incredibly obsessed with the relationship with self and how to develop the relationship with self in a healthy way. And then I would say almost 10 years ago, I went through a very painful marriage that ended up in divorce, but it ended really tragically and awful. And at the same time, my mom was dying of lung cancer, and I went through a miscarriage, and it all like happened in a very condensed period of time. And I'll never just forget, like, the day that my husband basically told me over the phone that he wasn't coming home, and I just experienced a miscarriage, and my mom, like 3 days prior, her doctor told us that she only had a few months to live. So I had a moment, I was like, wow, so this is what it means to have your life fall apart. It was a very bizarre moment and a very out of body experience. And so, for lack of a way to describe it, I went through a very intense dark night of the soul. It was, everything just came crashing down. And initially, it was really just about survival, as it is when you go through something like that. And I just needed to feel inspired. I needed a reason. I mean, I had my dog, and she was the reason why I got out of bed every day and got outside. But I needed a reason to live. And I'm not suicidal. I was never suicidal. But I definitely felt, which I think is common for many people, they would never commit suicide, but yet they would have suicidal ideation, right? They would have, this experience of, I don't want to live anymore. What's the point?
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to kill themselves, but I was in that place of just like, how does one actually move on from this? And so when you experience that, you have to do what you have to do to survive. And I'll never forget, I was sitting outside. It was a beautiful day in June, and it was the day after everything just came crumbling down. I was sitting outside with my dog, and this woman who's now a good friend of mine, who was a neighbor in my building, who was a coach. And this was before like coaching became like a thing. Where like everyone is a coach, and she was a coach, and she sat down next to me and she was talking to me, and to be honest, she shared with me the work of Tony Robbins. And I was not really, I knew Tony from infomercials, like that's what I grew up with. And she gave me some videos that were not this is long before everyone's work was on YouTube. This was, Instagram was not it existed, but not in the way that it exists today. I mean, we're talking, like I said, almost 10 years ago. And she gave me some videos that you couldn't find anywhere else, that she had access to, of him doing these pretty involved and intense interventions in these events that in his more high-ticketed events. And I am just sort of a skeptic by heart, but I was like, okay, well, I have nothing else to lose. Let me watch this. And that was it. That was like when I watched those interventions, it was like everything started to make sense to me. I'm a child of someone who was once a very well-known child and family psychiatrist. I grew up not really loving therapy and not really loving therapists, and feeling like I'd been let down a lot by therapists. I hate to say it, but it's true. And I definitely felt very let down by the couples therapy that my husband and I went to. Was absolutely terrible. It was terrible. And but that being said, I definitely would not have made it through that acute stage of trauma had it not been for speaking to a therapist twice a week. So I'm very grateful to her to have someone, to have had her to talk to. But anyway, this is just sort of where, in general, therapy never really resonated with me. And I felt like somehow the couples therapy model because we went to a few, I was like, this is ridiculous. This does not work.
I was just going to ask, because I was a licensed marriage and family therapist for years, and you are echoing my own thoughts quite well. Like the field of marriage and family therapy is not well suited to actually help most couples through those problems. They just very unfortunately are not.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was maybe a major concern you had with the therapy model that wasn't working? And because I see your work now and the work that you're doing and the tips you're offering I wish that's what marriage therapists were offering to many of their clients. What was it maybe that didn't work in therapy that you have started using with people that does work?
Well, you should know that I have an incredible coach. I have an incredible mentor who's been a strategic family therapist and worked with people, raped victims and abuse victims for 50 years. So I have what I consider to be the best mentors in the business. My opinion is Tony's the best coach in the world. So and I went through that training. So I feel that I have great training. So what I think from the couples counseling perspective, the biggest problem is that let me give you an example. So I have two friends who they're now friends, but these two people, they were students of mine who I worked with to just make their relationship better. But this was after there was an infidelity. And they got over that infidelity. I actually interviewed them for my podcast. And they've been together, they're in their 50s now, and they've been together since they were in their 20s. And they are like better than ever. And he cheated. He had an affair years ago, and they got through it. And I asked them how. And they said, we had the toughest therapist in the world. When we went into that therapist's office, we were getting ready for battle, and it was the best thing for us. He got in our faces, made us be totally accountable, didn't let us play a single victim game, none of that. And I think it depends on the couple, obviously, and it depends on what problem they have. But if they really have a big problem, you need a therapist who's going, you can't just be a mediator. You got to get in there and really, really be tough with people. And I think that's what was missing. People need to be accountable.
I want to pause the conversation to talk about our sponsor today, Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply. Guys, I know you're used to the 3-in-1s, but they aren't doing anything for your dating life. It's time to upgrade and be the best man that you can be. Plus, the smells, she will be asking to use the products. So go ahead, upgrade to Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply. It's affordable, it's all natural, and it smells like masculinity.
Do you think that maybe coaching is, for some couples like that, maybe coaching is that more direct approach? Can that maybe offer some guidance for people that are looking for a hard fix? Is that maybe one benefit of coaching over therapy for some couples?
I think, I think it's not coaching versus therapy. I think that really it's about the actual practitioner. It's about the person. And I think where therapy fails, in my humble opinion, is that although it's important to understand your family and things that happen in family, where therapy fails is that there's too much conversation about the trauma. And always talking about the trauma keeps the person traumatized. That is a fact. And there needs to be, and I know that there's definitely therapists who do this, because I know people who've had amazing experiences in therapy and have really transformed. So again, I think it's about the practitioner rather than about the therapy in general. But if you're not helping the person to change, and all you're doing is sitting there while they vent, what a waste of time and money that is, I think.
Yeah, my experience, even personally, I tell Adam this all the time because he's attachment. And I discovered attachment about 5 years ago, but I had seen many therapists, maybe 10 years of therapy, because I'd lost my dad very young. And it was incredible when I found this particular type of therapy, and the practitioner made all the difference. It was almost as if I had never been to a therapist in my life until I met my particular, he was in therapy. Now he's a coach as well, because there's some red tape that a lot of therapists don't like to push through, and it can get very complicated. So he felt he could be more effective as a coach.
Yes, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tony Robbins, of course. I mean, Not Your Guru, I think I've watched about 10 times at one point in my life as well.
I was there, and I'm actually in that film. I was there. That was like my first, that was 2 weeks after my mom died, and I was actually at that event.
At that filming.
Yeah. And that was the event that changed my life. Yeah.
Well, I could only imagine. I saw it over film and it was very impactful. So I can only imagine being there. So a lot of the tips that you have that I see is focused around, okay, so you kind of went through this dark night of the soul, and now it makes sense. I can see a lot of your story within the advice that you give. Like it's very transformational. It's very accountable. And what I see and what really frustrates me a lot, we actually did a whole episode on it yesterday, was kind of this blaming of the narcissist, like the blaming of the other person so that I can kind of stay in, that safe place, in that codependency. My training is with, addiction and trauma. So I would deal with the codependent, right? I would try and help them see their role and how they were enabling the other person and staying stuck within themselves. So I wonder, where do you see dating advice right now kind of going wrong? And like, where do you see the pinning of like the narcissist and they're the villain versus I'm the victim, like feel bad for me? What would you say to that? And like, how do people wake up?
Yeah. Well, this, it's just all these buzzwords. It's like, no, everyone's a narcissist. Everyone's a love bomber. Everyone's this, everyone's that. And it's just, it's not helpful. First of all, not everyone is a narcissist. There's plenty of selfish people out there, and there's plenty of immature people, and there are plenty of people who suck at relationship, to be perfectly honest, and they need help. But that doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist. And that takes away from the real narcissistic abuse that does actually happen out there. That's incredibly, incredibly damaging to a person's psyche. I think that I think that really and this is where it gets tricky. The problem with the advice out there is that there's a lot of main character energy right now. There's a lot of actually people are becoming narcissistic in their view of relationship. Everything is I, and like, you're responsible for you and I'm responsible for me. And, if you're going to be like that, then get out of my life. Now, where that energy is useful is for the person, it's usually a woman, who has low self-esteem, who has tolerated a ton of BS over and over and over again. Maybe she's been verbally abused. Maybe she's been physically abused. Maybe she just tolerates just nasty behavior. And so she does need a little bit of I'm the central character of my life energy. But a lot of people could really use the more of the energy of we're in this together, as opposed to everything is about me. And I think that ties into the everyone is a narcissist. And this whole idea of if they're a narcissist, then I don't have to look in the mirror. And that's, as you know, that's a very dangerous thing, because even if you have been abused, and look, in my 20s, I was in a relationship with a man who abused me. But even if you've been in a relationship where you've been abused, yes, there's a process. And you don't immediately say to the person, look in the mirror. That takes time. But eventually you have to look in the mirror. Let's shelve abuse, since that's such an extreme example. And it's common, but not as common as just being in a relationship where you both treated each other poorly. You have to look in the mirror. And if you are someone who's tolerated less than you know that you deserve, then you have to learn how to become the person who would never allow that again. It always goes back to your relationship with yourself. So, is it that everyone is a narcissist, or is it that you keep picking people who are a narcissist? Is it that everyone's a narcissist, or you're attracted to people who treat you like crap. And therefore, you really need to work on that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but that's definitely the problem. Also, another thing that I see as a problem, I want my king. I want my queen. You're not in your masculine energy. You're not in your feminine energy. Now, listen, the work of David Deida, who is the #1 scholar in masculine and feminine energy, is phenomenal. And I think it's very, very helpful. And I do think that there is masculine and feminine energy that resides in all of us. I do think that playing with those energies to create more intimacy with the person you're in a relationship with, it's all very valid. But people are now throwing it around as if they're experts. It's like, oh, you're being too masculine right now to a woman who's working hard in the workforce. Like, are you kidding me? Or like, really, are you kidding me? I'm masculine because I actually have a career. That's ridiculous. Or like you're telling a man that he's not being masculine enough because he's crying or whatever. And so this whole idea of, I want a king, great. Okay, so do I. You have to become someone that the king would actually want. And so what does that mean for you? What are some of the things that you have to change in order to be the kind of person that person that you wants long term? And so personal responsibility is the most important thing in this game, in the game of relationship and in a game of life. There's no escaping it. And the people who really, really transform are the ones who understand that.
So let's say you have somebody who comes to you and they're female and they're starting to kind of untangle some of these beliefs that they have about attraction and what they were attracted to. I'm sure that, you could probably understand that things get kind of tousled up with your belief systems when you go through this work, right? You kind of understand like what you were attracted to versus what you are attracted to, or what's good for you. So what message would you give to, either the woman or we have a huge, large audience of men that watch us as well, so some practical tips as to, okay, this is what you might have been attracted to. This is what is potentially not necessarily good for you. This is a difference. This is what you're going to notice. You might feel different. It might feel more calm. You might not be as attracted to them, but this is what is better for you. Like, how do you walk people through that?
Well, first and foremost, what I will say is that chemistry is really important. You cannot build a romantic relationship with someone who you are not attracted to physically. Because the difference between a friendship and a romantic relationship is sex and touch. It just is. So you must be attracted. But a lot of people, to your point, their picker is off because they're having intense chemistry with people who are bad for them. And so they may not lose all the chemistry for the people who are bad for them, but then how can they then be attracted to people who are actually good for them? I do believe that chemistry can grow. I don't think it can grow from nothing, but I think it can grow from, there's something there. I feel good around this person. Let me give this some time. I think it's easier for women for their attraction to grow for a man than it is. I think men, it's kind of like they're either drawn immediately or not. I think it can grow for a man. I just think for women value feeling like safe and protected so much. And so they will definitely, a lot of women's love and attraction will grow if they're around someone with whom they feel protected and safe with or important with. It just depends on the person. Like some people, they're attracted to people who are bad for them, not necessarily because of something trauma related. It's not necessarily a trauma response. Sometimes that response is, you look like my dad, or you are exactly like you're just the way that you move, your body type, how you look. We have a conglomerate of influences. What Hollywood has told me, you are just my type. And so I'm going to want to be in a relationship with you versus, oh, you're my type, you're really hot, whatever, I'm attracted to. Let's just see how you are as a person. Let me see what your values are. Let me see what your character is. And these are the things that we are supposed to, as we get older, place more value on. And we are supposed to be attracted to people's values and character. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes we just are just like, you look good. I'm attracted to you. I'm really desperate for a relationship and for love. And I don't want to be alone. And and then you throw in, my subconscious recognizes you, something about you is familiar from childhood. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So what I would say, actionable steps, is like, if you're someone who's always been attracted to someone who's bad for you or someone who's not good for you, it's time to get in touch with what's really important to you. It's time to get more value driven. It's time to look for other things in a person other than the surface. And if you're someone who's only been attracted to drama and to the roller coaster, then it's just learning how to not get freaked out over something going a little bit more slowly. Look, a lot of people who are attracted to the roller coaster actually value adventure, and they value surprise and adventure in their lives. And these are the people who get easily bored. And a lot of people who are drawn to the drama are actually very bored in their lives. They feel unfulfilled. Their lives lack meaning. And so they're looking to a relationship to fill that void. And that's what we do. Before we wake up, we go to relationships to fill the void of our boredom, to fill the void of our lack of meaning, to fill the void of the love that we are unable to give to ourselves, or we have not been able to derive from community. So it's important to identify first the voids that you are trying to fulfill and fill up as a result of seeking out these relationships with these kinds of people, and explore how you can fill those voids for yourself so that you can meet someone who is actually on your level from a value perspective. And so you would have to also get in touch with your values. So it's a process, and it's not necessarily, it depends on who you're working with. For some people, it's like, oh my God, it's like the light bulb goes off and it's like they know it right away. For other people, it could be a longer process, but it's really about the voids.
Jillian, that was a great thought. And just one moment, I want to jump in and talk about Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply that will help men look and feel more authentic on their dates. Guys, if you are wanting to step fully into your best self on that date, make sure you're taking care of yourself with Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply. And I agree with that, because so many people, if you don't grow up understanding how those connections should form, or you don't grow up getting that love, right? You don't grow up understanding what love could feel like, and even familial love or platonic love. When you don't have those models, like you said, you go out and you say, well, you're hot, and Hollywood has told me that that's my type, or your picker gets off. I think that that's such a huge component of that. I remembered just this morning, I was cruising on Instagram, and I saw one of your reels talking about how, some people are actually quite bad for you. And I remember your phrasing, I could hear it in my head, right? They're actually quite bad for you. And something that you said in there really resonated with me, which is not that there's the one. You're not looking for the one, right? I won't be very popular for this, but when people talk about soulmate and twin flame kind of experiences, it makes me almost nauseous, because I know that they are seeking this one perfect human being, and everybody else is to be discarded. So you have to see, are you this thing that makes me feel perfect at all times? And I loved so much what you said this morning, which is there are a variety of people who can be the potential one for you. And it's about finding that connection and being right for them in that moment and growing together. Can you talk a little bit maybe about when somebody does look in the mirror and they see who they are and they reflect, right? How do you become that best version of yourself so that when you meet that right person, what is maybe one or two key steps that somebody who's listening to this right now that says, I want to meet one of those potentials and be ready for that. I want to meet that king and do my work. What is maybe one or two things they could do today that they aren't doing already?
Taking responsibility for their behavior.
I love that.
Being accountable for that. So that's really important. And I think that everyone should ask themselves, how have I been the saboteur of my previous relationships? What have I done or not done that has not been serving me or my partner or the relationship? And what is it, is it that I am too consumed by stress? Is it that I get nasty? Is it that I withhold sex? Is it that I withhold love? Is it that is it that I cling? Is it that I avoid? Whatever it is, what is it that I do that does not serve the relationship? Is it my self-esteem? So I think it's really just asking that question and taking responsibility. And then, maybe you read some books. Maybe you do go to therapy. Maybe you do hire a coach. You're like, this thing keeps on showing up. I want to stop doing it. Maybe if it's self-esteem, you have to do something that gives your life a little bit more meaning. Maybe you have to start becoming financially independent for some people. Maybe it's that you have to get off, stop playing video games. Maybe you have to stop watching porn. I don't know what it is, but there are things and we have to look at it. That being said, no one is ever going to be 100% prepared for a relationship because there is nothing like a romantic relationship that's going to trigger us. So we have to prepare, but then we also have to recognize that our greatest work is done while we're inside of the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so when we're inside the relationship, we have to practice a lot of awareness. And the reality is that we have to, if more people came to the table with, this is who I am. This is the person who I want to become. But these are the struggles that I have. I'm going to mess up. These are the ways I'm going to mess up. I'm going to take full responsibility, but I want you to know that the person who I'm trying to become, that's very important to me. And I'm going to work on that. And I think that that's the deal.
I think if I can just add to that, I had a female client that I was working with, and she had given up herself, right? I think a lot of times females, we can kind of lose ourselves, right? In a relationship, and we can give and give and give. And at the end of this relationship, she didn't really feel as though she knew who she was. She didn't feel as though she had anything other than the relationship that was defining her. And so, back to you'd mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you had said, people will seek novelty, right? They'll seek things outside of themselves to, they need something to kind of make them feel alive again. So we worked really hard on what is it that makes you happy outside of a relationship? Sometimes I think people don't know what that is. And she was a singer and she hadn't sung for many, many years. She'd kind of retired that part of herself. And I'm like, what? Why did you do that? You're an amazing musician. You're an amazing singer. And so I worked with her to get her back up performing, right? Get her back on the stage, get her doing something that she felt really proud of so that she wasn't just going into this relationship. And, Esther Perel's work talks about, attraction and desire is really created in this space where a partner is potentially looking up to you, like you're doing something and you're giving a speech or you're on that stage and there's something very sexy about that. That's something that you can feel proud of. And that's something that, if a man is watching you, it's very, very sexy. So my thing is don't give up the things that make you happy. And sometimes people don't even know what it is that makes them happy. But I say, if is it travel? Go do something. And if you don't enjoy it, that's okay. It doesn't have to be your thing. Like, then keep trying. Is it mountain biking? Is it yoga? Like, do you feel at peace when you walk out of a yoga class? Then you know, okay, I need to do more of this. Like, go to the places that make you feel good so that you can recharge and bring more to the relationship. So I have a question then. Of course, we do deal with, I don't want to say masculine and feminine. My content really started out with me trying to understand men, right? I've read The Superior Man. I've read some of these texts that you speak of. And so we have the masculine and the yin and the yang. So I wonder what your opinion is on, where do you see men struggling to form really deep relationships? Where do you think that they're at right now with, potentially why their marriages are failing, why women are stepping out of marriages? You hear this statistic all the time, 80% of divorces are filed by women. And it's like, okay, well, there's obviously there's something happening, right? There's an energy that's happening, even with modern dating. So how do you think men and women are really interacting with each other in relationship that is causing us so much discord and so much strife?
There's a very old belief system that most men above a certain age share, which is, I must succeed in order to be worthy. And a lot of a man's worth is tied into his work. When work is not going well, when anything is not going well, that you have attached your sense of self and worthiness to, then what starts to happen is yourself starts to crumble, and you start to feel insignificant, and you start to feel worthless, and your life is starting to feel less meaningful. When that happens, stress happens. And this is the stress that happens where it's not about the event. It's about how we're looking at the event. It's not that someone died. It's not that there's a divorce, right? Because there's obviously very stressful things that happen in life. But this is the kind of stress where if you don't think you're worthy or you don't think you're good enough, which is basically the same thing, because work is not going well or you're not successful, then you are going to be consumed with yourself, with your stress, and you're going to live inside here. And when you live inside here, you lose presence. And then you are no longer present with your partner. Let's just say your female partner. And a woman, whether she's in a relationship with a man or a woman, she needs presence from her partner. That is very, very important. We women need to feel like we are understood and seen. And so what I see is the crisis that's happening is just stress ruins relationships. It's not really the stress, it's how we react to stress. If your whole belief system is being challenged and you feel like your world is falling apart, you are not going to be a good partner, because you're just going to be consumed with yourself. And so that is what I see the most. That is what I think is happening the most, why so many women, heterosexual women, are filing for divorce, is because of that lack of presence. A lot of women will file for divorce because they feel like in that lack of presence, there's also the lack of romance. Okay? Now, there's plenty of things that women do wrong in their relationships. This is not to blame men, but I'm just answering your question. I think that also the younger men, the younger generation of men, are in crisis because they're lonely. They don't have their boys, their community of other men to really bolster them and support them. I think a lot of them are in isolation. I think technology has made it so that more and more young men in particular are addicted to pornography. And I think that addiction to pornography is is incredibly destructive to relationships. Incredibly. I think it's as destructive as being addicted to cocaine or alcohol. And I think that that's a lot of what's going on. It's overall, if you were to peel away the onion, and this even relates to the women that you were talking about trying to find something outside of the relationship, is a lack of meaning. One of the most profound books that I ever read that changed my life and really in a lot of ways is like the essence of the work that I do, is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Mm-hmm. We are really lost souls when we don't have meaning. And the meaning doesn't have to be major. It could be little things. And it's different for everyone. And so people struggling in their romantic relationships, the addiction to porn, the tying our worth to how much money we make and our achievement, tying our masculinity to that, tying our femininity to other things, it really boils down to a lack of meaning, which means that finding meaning in life and being able to meet our needs is really the antidote to all these problems. But that's really what I see is a lot of people, also with social media, people are pursuing things that are quite shallow. And in order to feel, and no one will ever feel fulfilled pursuing the shallow. We will only feel fulfilled if we actually have true meaning in our lives. And that we get meaning by connection, we get meaning by giving back in some way. So, loneliness, isolation, old belief systems, and lacking meaning.
Yeah, I've read that book about 4 times. That's a big Tony. I remember Tony Robbins telling me about that. I'm like, Viktor Frankl, have you read that book? It's an amazing book. No,
it's an amazing book. And I read that book before I knew about Tony. And then one of the things that actually really drew me to his work is that that work really touches him as well.
I think it's really difficult to, in a modern world, right? I mean, how do you even start with dating apps? How do you not succumb to the shallow, right? When we are living in a shallow world more than ever, you are judging someone and whether you're going to be a life partner with someone over a screen and maybe 300 words. So it's like, I wonder, how do you break through all that noise? How do you get relationships? Do you just throw away the dating apps? Do you say, you know what, I'm going to go live my life and just put myself in places where I think that I will meet certain people? Are you, do you get a hobby? Do you walk up to a girl or a guy at the park and say, hi? Kind of, where do you see this all?
Yes to everything you just said. Yes, 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 yes. If you're going to be on the dating apps, you have to be very grounded and you have to not care so much. You have to have fun with it. You have to have fun with it. I think that people in general have to not care so much if they haven't found someone. Now, I want people to find someone. I want people to be in love. I love love. And I think relationships are incredibly important. And I think that a healthy relationship adds to our longevity. I think an unhealthy relationship takes away from our longevity, but the power of a strong bond with someone is, well, it's powerful. But people have to be more patient. And they do have to expand their network, because the more new people you meet, the more people they know, and then they know. So it's not going to happen from sitting on your couch. And you can certainly scroll through dating apps, but remember, all these apps are designed to make you very addicted. So you have to be extremely grounded, and you have to go on dates with very low expectations and just try to have a little fun with it. And because the thing is, most people really, it behooves most people to go on dates with people who are not the one so that they can practice dating. A lot of people need practice being themselves. A lot of people are scared. They're insecure. They don't really know how to be themselves. They're putting up some sort of mask, some sort of front. And learning how to relax your body, how to breathe, how to just be yourself, how to build rapport with someone. These are important skills to have. So it actually behooves a person to go on many dates to just practice doing that. That's how I see it.
I love that, because so many men, especially, they go on every date and they treat it like it's the last date they will ever have. So they dance and sing and tell jokes and think of 50 different topics, and they do everything they can to be as interesting as possible instead of being authentic. And I think maybe you can speak to this, if, two smart, educated ladies here who know what they want. Are women looking for dopamine hits and interest, or are women looking more for that authenticity, that human connection? What can men do differently in those two approaches?
It depends on the woman. It depends on the woman. A mature, more evolved woman is looking for that true connection. A more shallow woman or an immature woman or a younger woman is looking for the dopamine hits. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
No, 100%. Yes. And no right or wrong, really. But if it just depends on what you want to lead with. If you want to lead with your accomplishments and the materialistic items and the extrinsic value, I really try and coach my men just dependent on what type of a woman that you want. Because if she's attracted to your extrinsic value, then you need to be careful, because as soon as those extrinsic values go away, she might go away also. So I think a lot of men, you might see them go through a lot of times you'll see them go through a midlife crisis, and they go through this kind of arc. Sometimes we'll try and get, oh my gosh, I'm free. I'm out of a divorce. I can date whoever I want. I can get this. And then it becomes, okay, well, what else? What is left? And they have to sometimes face their own dark night of the soul. They have to sometimes face what it is that they have defined, like you said, Jillian, what they've defined their value with. Their career, their money, their worth is tied so much to what they've accomplished that a lot of times they also have to figure out, who am I without all this? And am I lovable? And is she going to leave me if I'm not attaching myself to these things? What do you think, Jillian?
It's the same thing with women. If she just leads with her looks or her sexuality, which many women will do, and then she's going to attract someone who's just there for that, as opposed to, being your authentic self and letting someone actually really see you and understand you. If you're just leading with, how can I seduce this person? You're going to attract a certain caliber of man.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been a very amazing conversation. It's so nice to finally get to chat with you, hear your story, hear the why behind what you do. We hope to have you on again. And where can we find you? What are you passionate about that you'd love to tell the audience about? Everything about you and where you are.
Yeah, I think right now, I'm just really passionate about my podcast, Jillian on Love. I think that, with Instagram, which I love, those reels, you only get a minute 30. And so my podcast is an opportunity for me to really take these topics that really have a ton of nuance and go much deeper into it. I'm in the process of writing a book. And I have, my membership for women, which is the Conscious Woman, which is really helping women to step into their power and be responsible, powerful women in their own right in relationships. And I've got my courses. So I've got a lot, and everything I'm doing right now is I'm loving. So yeah. And basically, if you can spell my name, Jillian Turecki, you will find me.
Wonderful. What is the best platform people should look? I mean, I love you on Instagram. Is that where you'd like people to find you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on TikTok as well, but yes, I would say Instagram and my podcast, Jillian on Love, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, we will have all of that information included in the show notes. And if you're watching this, it'll be in the description below.
A quick mention about our sponsor today, Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply, which is your full-stop shop for everything that you need, from shampoo to beard grooming. The ladies, they are raving about the scent, especially the rosewood. It is affordable. It is all natural. And we thank them for sponsoring us. Adam, where can they find you?
So I am Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. You will find my website, adamlanesmith.com, where I have the Attachment Bootcamp video course that shows you how to overcome your insecurities in relationships and build a fulfilling and authentic connection with a partner. I also have my coaching one-on-one on there so that I can help you directly. If you need to accelerate that process, I'll be happy to help you. I'm also at Attachment Adam on Instagram and on YouTube with all kinds of video content. Sarah, what about you?
Awesome, Adam. They can find me at sarahdawnmoore.com. I am like Jillian. If you type in Sarah Dawn Moore, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you'd like to follow me, I am there. I also have a course called Mastering Modern Love, which really focuses on the masculine and feminine and how they interact in relationships, as well as my one-on-one coaching, sarahdawnmoore.com. Well, thank you so much, Jillian. It has been an honor to have you on.
Oh, thank you.
This is the I Wish You Knew podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.